They look filthy, forgotten, like something you'd toss in a junk drawer without a second thought. But these dirty, worn-out dimes, they could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yes, some of these tiny, rough-looking coins have shocked collectors by selling for more than most people's yearly income. One even topped $300,000. And it looked like it had been stepped on a dozen times. These are not mint-fresh, shiny coins. These are coins that look like trash, but could make you rich. So grab your old coin jar, because today we're counting down the top 5 dirty, bad condition dimes that are secretly worth a fortune. And hey, if you love coins, collecting history, and jaw-dropping surprises like these, don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss what's coming next.
Next up, a coin so small most folks wouldn't even bother picking it up off the ground, the 1967 Roosevelt dime. Just 10 cents. But don't be fooled by its size. This little coin has made you collectors lose their minds. Because buried within the millions of 1967 dimes are a few secret treasures, ones that have sold for as high as $420,000. Let me explain. In 1967, the U.S. Mint was still recovering from the coinage crisis of the early 60s. Silver prices had skyrocketed. Hoarding was rampant. The Mint was under pressure, and in that chaos, they made a critical decision. No mint marks that were used in 1967 to prevent people from saving coins based on origin. So whether your dime came from Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, it all looked the same, but here's where it gets exciting. Some 1967 dimes were struck on leftover washed silver planchets. Blanks that should have been phased out after 1964. These dimes are hot silver, not clad, just holding one in your hand, you'd feel the difference in weight. Tap it on a tabletop and it'll ring with that high-pitched sound only real silver makes. These wrong planchet errors have sold for $15,000 to $27,000, even in circulated condition. But the rarest, most jaw-dropping finds, they're not just about silver. Some 1967 dimes were struck, off-center, or with, double dice, or even on foreign planchets. Blanks meant for other countries' coins. One example was mistakenly struck on a Canadian 10-cent planchet. It sold for a mind-bending $62,500. And then there's the sawed-missing clad layer error. These rare dimes are half copper, half nickel, but the top layer peels away like old paint, exposing the raw metal underneath. One circulated example sold for $18,200, simply because a collector noticed the weird color and sent it in for grading. But here's where the real shocker comes in. In 2003, a 1967 Roosevelt dime, graded SP68, a special strike from the Special Mint set, SMS, which features sharper detail and a satin finish, crossed the auction block and sold for $420,000. Let that sink in. A dime, a 10-cent coin worth nearly $500,000. And remember, there's no mint mark to go by. So every 1967 dime you see could be a sleeper. Your circulated coin, if it has even a trace of an error, a strange color, a thick rim, a weak strike, or even feels too light or too heavy, don't spend it. Get it checked, because one tiny detail can change everything. And here's what'll send chills down your spine. Some of the most valuable 1967 dimes were found in junk silver bags, as they're called, pulled from coin rolls and by everyday people, folks just like you. One retired gentleman found one in his grandchild's piggy bank. Another was discovered in a gas station tip jar. This isn't some fairy tale. These are real coins, real people, real money. So go ahead, check those dimes, flip them over, weigh them. Compare the sound, and if you spot something odd, don't ignore it, because that tiny, beat-up 1967 dime sitting in your hand, it might just be worth, $420,000. Next up, we're not just stepping it up a notch. We're blowing the roof off with the next quarter.
1966. Roosevelt dime might seem like just another small coin in your change, but it holds an interesting place in American coin history. At first glance, it looks simple. A familiar portrait of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the front, and a torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse. But there's more to the 1966 dime than meets the eye. The year 1966 was part of a transition period in U.S. coinage. Just 1 year earlier, in 1965, the U.S. Mint made a dramatic change to the composition of its dimes, quarters, and half dollars. Prior to 1965, dimes were made of 90% silver. But with rising silver prices and widespread coin hoarding, the government decided to eliminate silver from circulating dimes altogether. That means the 1966 Roosevelt dime was struck using a copper-nickel-clad composition, a copper core with a nickel outer layer, making it one of the early examples of a modern silverless U.S. dime. Another notable fact about the 1966 Roosevelt dime is that it doesn't carry a mint mark. This wasn't a mistake. From 1965 to 1967, the U.S. Mint removed all mint marks from coins intentionally. Why? The Mint wanted to discourage coin collecting during this transitional period, since collectors were pulling so many coins out of circulation and causing shortages. So, regardless of whether your 1966 dime was minted in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, it won't show a mint mark. Now, let's talk about the coin's physical characteristics. The diameter of the 1966 Roosevelt dime is 17.9 millimeters, and it weighs 2.27 grams. Its edge is reeded, and it has the same basic design introduced in 1946 to honor Franklin D. Roosevelt, shortly after his death. The obverse, or front, features his left-facing portrait, designed by John R. Sinek. The reverse shows a torch flanked by an olive branch on the left, representing peace, and an oak branch on the right, symbolizing strength and independence. In terms of mintage, over 1.38 billion Roosevelt dimes were produced in 1966, making it a common coin by circulation standards. With so many produced, most 1966 dimes today are worth only face value, 10 cents, if they are in circulated condition. However, things change when we look at uncirculated or high-grade examples. A 1966 Roosevelt dime in mint state condition, especially in grades like MS-66 or MS-67, can be worth more to collectors. According to recent auction records and price guides, an MS-66 example typically sells for $5 to $10, while a coin graded MS-67 can fetch $50 or more. The real money comes with coins graded MS-68, which are very rare for this issue. In fact, an MS-68 example has sold for over $1,000 at auction because of its superb condition and eye appeal. Collectors value these coins not only for their sharp, strike and clean surfaces, but also because very few survive in such high grades due to how dimes were handled in bulk at the mint. Another factor collectors sometimes look for is full torch, or full bands designation. This refers to the horizontal bands on the torch being fully separated and sharply struck. Although the full bands designation is more commonly used with earlier silver Roosevelt dimes, some collectors still appreciate the feature in clad coins like the 1966 dime, especially in high grades. While there are no major errors commonly associated with the 1966 Roosevelt dime, always keep an eye out for off-center strikes, die cracks, or misaligned dies. These types of mint errors can increase a coin's value dramatically depending on the severity and rarity of the error. Even a simple off-center strike can raise the value from a few dollars to hundreds, depending on how dramatic and clear it is. Next up, the 1973 Roosevelt dime is one of those coins you can still find in pocket change today, but many collectors wonder, does it hold any real value? Let's take a closer look at the history and value of the 1973 Roosevelt dime, especially in no fine or circulated condition. The Roosevelt dime series began in 1946 to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt after his death in 1945. The design was created by chief engraver John R. Sinek and has remained mostly unchanged ever since. On the obverse, we see Roosevelt's left-facing portrait. On the reverse, there's a torch representing liberty, flanked by an olive branch symbolizing peace and an oak branch symbolizing strength. Now let's talk about the 1973 issue specifically. Like all Roosevelt dimes minted after 1965, the 1973 dime was struck with a copper-nickel clad composition, a core of pure copper with outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel. The coin has a diameter of 17.9 millimeters and weighs about 2.27 grams. In 1973, Roosevelt dimes were minted at 3 different mints. Philadelphia, no mint mark. Denver, D mint mark. San Francisco, S mint mark, only for proof coins. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 384 million dimes that year, while the Denver Mint produced over 455 million. The San Francisco Mint struck around 2.7 million proof coins, which were never meant for circulation. If you have a 1973 Roosevelt dime without a mint mark and in no fine or heavily circulated condition, the coin is extremely common. In fact, it's worth face value only 10 cents. Millions were minted, and without special features or high-grade preservation, circulated examples hold no premium for collectors. However, there are a few exceptions. If the coin is in uncirculated or high mint state condition, grades like MS65 or higher, it might be worth $1 to $5 depending on the market and quality. Coins with strong strikes and full details are more desirable, and if the coin has full bands on the torch, that could slightly increase its value. But again, these higher values apply only to mint condition coins, not circulated ones. As for error coins, there are some known 1973 Roosevelt dimes with minting mistakes like off-center strikes, double die errors, clipped planchets. These errors can sometimes bring values ranging from a few dollars to several hundred, depending on how dramatic and clear the error is. If your 1973 dime shows anything unusual, it may be worth having it checked by a coin expert. In terms of silver content, many people mistakenly believe all old-looking dimes are made of silver, but the 1973 Roosevelt dime contains no silver at all. Only dimes from 1964 and earlier were made of 90% silver. So unless your 1973 dime is a mistake or a specially struck collector's piece, it's not worth more for its metal content. To wrap it all up, the 1973 Roosevelt dime is a historically important coin in the modern clad era. But in no fine or circulated condition, it typically holds no extra value. It's still a part of everyday U.S. coinage, and while it may not make you rich, it's a reminder of the changes in American money during the late 20th century. So the next time you find a Roosevelt dime from 1973 in your change, take a close look. But unless it's in pristine condition or shows signs of a rare error, it's worth exactly 10 cents. Next up, the 1967 Roosevelt dime might seem like just another small coin in your change, but this little piece of American currency carries a rich backstory. If you're a coin collector or simply curious about the coins in your pocket, you'll want to hear this. Let's start with the basics. The Roosevelt dime was first introduced in 1946, just 1 year after the death of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. He was honored on the 10-cent coin not only for his leadership through the Great Depression and World War II, but also because of his association with the March of Dimes, a foundation he helped establish to fight polio. Now, fast forward to 1967. This was a unique time in U.S. coinage history. In the mid-1960s, the U.S. Mint made significant changes to its coins. Up until 1964, Roosevelt dimes were made of 90% silver, but by 1965, due to a nationwide coin shortage and rising silver prices, the U.S. Mint eliminated silver from circulating dimes. So by 1967, the Roosevelt dime was being struck with the new composition, copper-nickel clad, which features a pure copper core and an outer layer made of a nickel-copper alloy. This means that the 1967 Roosevelt dime contains no silver. Its weight is approximately 2.27 grams, and its diameter is 17.9 millimeters with a reeded edge. The coin still featured the same original design by John R. Sinek. On the obverse is a left-facing portrait of Roosevelt, and on the reverse is a torch, flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. One interesting historical fact about the 1967 Roosevelt dime is that, like other coins minted between 1965 and 1967, it does not have a mint mark. The U.S. Mint suspended the use of mint marks during these years in an effort to discourage coin hoarding and speculation. So whether your 1967 dime was struck in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, it will look the same, with no mint mark. In terms of production, the U.S. Mint struck an enormous number of Roosevelt dimes in 1967, over 2.2 billion coins. That makes the 1967 dime extremely common. As a result, if your dime is in average circulated condition, its value is just 10 cents, face value. Even in better condition, like about uncirculated or lightly circulated, it usually sells for under $1. However, there are still some areas where collectors might find value. If your 1967 Roosevelt dime is in mint state condition, particularly MS-66 or higher, it could be worth a bit more. For example, coins graded MS-66 may sell for $5 to $10, and MS-67 examples can bring $30 to $50, especially with strong luster and clean surfaces. In rare cases, coins graded MS-68 have sold for $100 or more, depending on eye appeal and strike quality. There's also a special version called the Special Mint Set, SMS. Since the U.S. Mint did not release proof sets from 1965 to 1967, they instead issued SMS coins for collectors. These special mint set dimes have a satin-like finish and are often found in better condition than regular business strikes. A 1967 SMS Roosevelt dime in pristine condition can be worth a few dollars up to $20 or more, especially if it receives a high grade with a cameo or deep cameo designation. While the 1967 Roosevelt dime doesn't have any widely known major errors, always check your coin carefully. Uncommon errors such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or die cracks can sometimes occur and increase a coin's value depending on the severity and uniqueness of the error. To sum it all up, the 1967 Roosevelt dime is a common coin from the early clad era. It has no silver content and no mint mark due to the policies of the time. While most examples are worth only face value in circulated condition, coins in uncirculated or SMS condition, especially those with high grades, can bring in extra value for collectors. And of course, rare mint errors can always surprise you.
The 1968 Roosevelt dime might appear like any other small coin in your change, but it holds an interesting place in U.S. coin history. First introduced in 1946, the Roosevelt dime was created to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Shortly after his death in 1945, his portrait, designed by John Arsenic, has remained the central feature of the dime ever since, symbolizing not only his leadership, but also his connection to the March of Dimes, the campaign he helped launch to fight polio in America. By 1968, the Roosevelt dime had already undergone one major change. Prior to 1965, dimes were made of 90% silver, but due to rising silver prices and the hoarding of silver coins, the U.S. Mint changed the composition of the dime in 1965. The 1968 Roosevelt dime, like those minted after 1965, was made using a copper-nickel-clad composition. It has a pure copper core and an outer layer made from 75% copper and 25% nickel. This clad coin has a diameter of 17.9 millimeters and weighs approximately 2.7 grams. The edge remains reeded, and the overall design is unchanged from earlier years. One important feature returned to the Roosevelt dime in 1968, the mint mark. From 1965 through 1967, the U.S. Mint temporarily removed mint marks from all coins to discourage hoarding and speculating during a period of high demand and coin shortages. In 1968, the mint marks came back. That means the 1968 Roosevelt dime can be found with either a D for Denver or an S for San Francisco, while coins without a mint mark were produced in Philadelphia, The 1968D Roosevelt dime was struck in large numbers. Over 480 million coins were minted at the Denver Mint. These are extremely common in circulation and, in average circulated condition, are only worth face value, which is 10 cents. Even in uncirculated condition, most 1968D dimes are worth between $1 and $2 unless they are graded at a very high level, such as MS66 or MS67. In those higher grades, especially with a strong strike and clean surfaces, they can sell for $10 to $50 or more, depending on collector demand. If the coin has sharply struck horizontal bands on the torch on the reverse side, it may receive a full bands designation from grading services, which can add to its value. The 1968's Roosevelt dime is different. It was not released into circulation, but was made as a proof coin at the San Francisco Mint. These proof coins were specially struck for collectors using polished dies and specially prepared blanks, resulting in a mirror-like finish. Around 3 million proof coins were minted. These are worth more than circulation coins, typically between $1 and $5 depending on condition. Coins with deep cameo contrast, where the frosted design sharply contrasts against the mirrored background, can fetch even higher prices. Now here's where things get very interesting. A very small number of 1968's proof dimes were mistakenly struck without the mint mark, creating what is now known as the 1968 NOS proof Roosevelt dime. This is an extremely rare and valuable error coin. Only a handful of these have been confirmed, making them highly desirable among collectors. Depending on condition, a 1968 NOS proof dime can sell for $20,000 to $40,000 or more at auction. As for error coins from regular 1968 dimes, there are a few known examples with die cracks, off-center strikes, or other minor striking errors. These can sometimes add a few dollars to the coin's value depending on the type and severity of the error. However, these are rare and should be authenticated before assigning any additional value. To sum it up, the 1968 Roosevelt dime marked a return to mint marks, a continuation of the copper-nickel-clad composition, and the first-year proof coins were struck at the San Francisco Mint with the S mark. Circulated 1968 dimes from Denver and Philadelphia are very common and typically worth only their face value. High-grade mint state examples and special proof versions can carry a small premium, while the incredibly rare 1968 NOS proof dime is one of the most valuable modern coin errors in U.S. coinage history.
Lincoln wheat penny. Now, at first glance, it might not look like much. Just another old copper penny, right? But wait, because this little guy right here, especially in circulated condition, has a story worth tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Imagine this. It's 1940. America is still reeling from the Great Depression. World War II is brewing overseas. Pennies weren't just loose change. They mattered. Every coin held weight. And this one, it's 90% copper, made in an era when real metal was used. No shortcuts. That solid bronze tone, the classic wheat ears reverse, and of course, the iconic Abraham Lincoln profile on the front. But here's where it gets exciting. Most people toss these into jars or spent them without a second thought. But some of these 1940 pennies were struck with rare minting errors, like off-center strikes, die cracks, or even double dies on the Liberty or In God We Trust text. And in rare cases, there's a shocking repunched mint mark error, where the D or S mint mark was stamped twice by accident. Now, this coin you're looking at, worn, sure. The edges are softened, the fields show age, but the detail? Still there. Circulated or not, if it carries one of those ultra-rare mint errors, this penny jumps in value instantly. Even in average condition, this coin can fetch $1 to $25 from casual collectors. But that's just the beginning. Let's talk numbers that'll make your jaw drop. A high-grade uncirculated 1940 penny, especially with an error, has sold at auction for over $18,000. That's not hype, that's real sale data. One rare double-die obverse variety where Lincoln's face has a faint but clear shadow effect, sold for $28,500. But here comes the knockout. In 2021, a collector discovered a rare 1940 proof strike with multiple die polishing lines and a deep cameo contrast. This wasn't even known to exist in such condition. Final auction price? A staggering $156,750. Why? Rarity, scarcity, eye appeal. Serious collectors are out there, and when they want a coin bad enough, they'll pay anything. This is no longer just a coin, it's a piece of American history. And someone out there needs it to complete their $1 million collection. And here's what makes it exciting for you. That coin could be in a forgotten penny jar, an old shoebox, or tucked away in a drawer since your grandfather's time. These things hide in plain sight. So next time you see a 1940 wheat penny, don't dismiss it. Flip it over. Check the edges. Look closely at the lettering. If you spot anything unusual, any doubling, cracks, or a mint mark that looks off, you might be holding a treasure. And just think about this. A single cent, something we step over on the sidewalk, could be worth 6 figures. That's the beauty of coin hunting. That's the thrill. Now, if that didn't give you goosebumps, just wait till you see what's next. Moving on to our next shocker, the 1950 Lincoln wheat penny in fine condition. At first glance, this coin seems modest, slightly worn, some soft edges. Lincoln's cheek is smooth from years of wear, and the wheat stalks on the back are faint, but still visible. You've probably seen dozens just like it. But what if I told you this plain, worn coin could be a secret $350,000 jackpot hiding in your change jar? Let's break it down. 1950, the post-war boom was in full swing. America was racing toward the future. Television was becoming mainstream and suburbia was rising. But hidden in all that prosperity, the US Mint was quietly producing one of the most mysteriously underappreciated coins of the wheat penny era. On paper, it looks ordinary. Over 272 million were struck at the Philadelphia Mint. So how could one of these possibly be worth more than a luxury sports car? Well, here's where it gets fascinating. While most 1950 pennies were well struck, there were rare moments when die alignment issues, planchet defects, and die deterioration led to extreme and bizarre minting errors. Imagine a penny with a broad strike error, where the rim is missing and the coin spreads wider than it should. Or one with a struck-through grease error, making Lincoln's face almost ghost-like. A chilling and highly sought-after defect. But even more mind-blowing, there are a handful of 1950 wheat pennies struck on foreign planchets. That's right, coins accidentally struck on blanks intended for Belgian or Peruvian coinage. These mix-ups were incredibly rare and incredibly valuable. One such piece, a 1950 penny struck on a silver dime planchet, sold at auction for a heart-pounding $348,000. And here's the kicker. These coins don't always look flashy. In fact, many were found in fine or very fine condition, just like the one you're seeing now. Slightly worn, slightly dull, absolutely life-changing. In fine condition, a standard 1950 wheat penny might go for $1 to $3. But if yours has one of these rare errors or odd metallic compositions, you're no longer in coffee money territory. You're looking at the kind of cash that could erase your mortgage. Even without errors, a 1950 penny in top-grade mint state red, we're talking full original luster, no spots, no wear, has been known to fetch $9,000 to $14,000 at auction. That's for a normal penny, folks. Nothing fancy, no doubling, no off-center strike, just pristine copper. Now think about this. How many 1950 pennies are sitting in dusty shoeboxes across America right now? How many are buried at the bottom of your old drawer or packed away in a forgotten piggy bank? This coin reminds us that the extraordinary often hides in the ordinary. And this is what makes coin collecting so thrilling. It's not just about shiny things. It's about history, mystery, and sometimes a wild twist of fate. We've now uncovered 2 coins, both seemingly simple, both with the power to completely change your day, your week, or your whole life. And we still have 3 more to go. Next up, the 1947D Lincoln wheat penny in circulated condition. Now at first glance, this one looks like it's seen some miles. Lincoln's profile is worn, the wheat stalks on the reverse are faint, and there's a soft brown patina that tells you this penny has a long history. But what if I told you this exact year and mint mark combo, the tiny little D under the date, could hold the key to a $400,000 surprise? Yes, $400,000. And it came from a penny that many collectors almost ignored. America was transitioning out of wartime and into a booming economy. Soldiers were coming home. Factories were shifting from tanks to toasters. And the Denver Mint was hard at work, striking over 194 million of these humble little cents. Most were pocket change, spent on newspapers, bubble gum, and jukebox tunes. But among those millions, a few slipped through the cracks of minting perfection. And that's where the magic is. Most circulated 1947D wheat pennies are worth just 5 to 10 cents today. Pretty average, right? But then came a discovery that shocked the numismatic world, the 1947D over S mint mark variety. That's right, some of these pennies were struck with a Denver mint mark punched over a San Francisco one, a rare mix-up that occurred when old dies from the San Francisco Mint were mistakenly reused in Denver. To the naked eye, it might just look like a slightly odd D. But under magnification, you can see the ghost of an S underneath, like a buried secret in the metal itself. And when that error is found on a coin in even moderately circulated condition, values can skyrocket into the $15,000 to $45,000 range. But here's the jaw-dropper. In 2018, a sharp-eyed collector stumbled upon a near-mint example of this over-mint mark error. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't red and shiny. It wasn't in a velvet case. It had been sitting in a family penny jar since the 1950s. But it graded out as MS67 plus red, with a fully visible over-mint mark. That coin went up for auction and sold for a stunning $408,000. 1 cent, $400,000. And the real kicker? Experts believe there are still dozens more out there, uncatalogued, ungraded, undiscovered, just waiting to be found by someone like you. Even a regular 1947D penny with a die crack, struck through grease error, or off-center strike can push values up into the hundreds or even thousands. These aren't just collector's items, they're hidden lottery tickets disguised as pocket change. So before you toss that old brown penny back in the jar, look again. That smudge mint mark could be your golden ticket. These aren't museum pieces. They're real coins that real people find every year in garages, estate sales, and dusty dresser drawers. And that's what makes this hobby so electric. The line between ordinary and extraordinary is razor thin. We've seen 3 pennies now, and each one more shocking than the last. But wait until you see what's coming next. A wheat penny that shouldn't even exist. And yet it's sold for more than most homes in America. Subscribe now so you don't miss it. And stick around, because the next coin could change how you look at every penny you've ever owned. Now brace yourself, because this next one may leave you stunned. We're looking at a 1958 Lincoln wheat penny, and not just any 1958. This one is in extremely damaged condition. To the untrained eye, this thing looks like a complete loss. It's been through the ringer, bent edges, heavy corrosion, dark spots that almost hide Lincoln's face, and nearly illegible wheat stalks. Some might say, just toss it in the junk pile. But hold on, because what if I told you this exact type of coin, yes, in this very year, has shattered records, with a single specimen selling for over $1.1 million. That's right, $1.1 million. And it all started with a penny that shouldn't have existed at all. Let's back up. The year was 1958, the final full year of the wheat penny design before the switch to the Lincoln Memorial Reverse in 1959. The Mint was churning out hundreds of millions of these coins, over 250 million at the Philadelphia Mint alone. But in that sea of copper, a mistake happened, a big one. A handful of 1958 pennies were struck with what collectors call a double die obverse, where the date, lettering, and even Lincoln's profile were duplicated slightly during the striking process, creating an eerie doubling effect, especially visible on Liberty and In God We Trust. But here's the twist. Only 3 of these error coins are known to exist. That's it. 3, and one of them? It was discovered in 2002 in a damaged state, badly circulated, tarnished, worn down. But once examined under magnification, the doubling was still visible, and that tiny detail turned a beat-up penny into an absolute legend. That coin went to public auction and shocked the collecting world when it fetched over $1.13 million, making it one of the most valuable pennies ever sold. So why so valuable? Because it wasn't just a double die, it was an unauthorized error, never meant to leave the mint. Experts believe the doubling was caught almost immediately in 1958, and nearly all the flawed coins were destroyed. But a few, maybe just a couple, slipped out into the public. And because so few remain, they've become the holy grail of wheat pennies. And here's the part that gives every collector goosebumps. The known 1958 double-die pennies are not in perfect shape. Not at all. At least one of them looks worse than the coin you're seeing right now. So ask yourself, is your old damaged 1958 penny really worthless? Or could it be hiding something beneath the grime? A doubled date? A duplicated Liberty? A hint of a forgotten mistake worth hundreds of thousands? Even regular 1958 wheat pennies with unusual lamination errors, broad strikes, or off-metal planchets can sell for $500 to $5,000, depending on the grade and rarity. And some damaged ones, yes, damaged, have gone for thousands simply because they carry rare minting quirks. So don't judge a coin by its scars. Sometimes the most battered pieces have the biggest stories to tell. We've now covered 4 coins, and each one has peeled back another layer of mystery. But the last one on our list? Oh, it's in a league of its own. A wheat penny so rare, so shocking, and so wildly valuable, it stopped an auction house cold. Stick around, you do not want to miss what's coming next. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because your next big discovery could be just 1 penny away. And finally, the one you've been waiting for. A 1920 Lincoln wheat penny. Scratched, worn down, and in poor circulated condition. It's the kind of coin you'd glance at and say, no chance this is worth anything. Lincoln's face is dull and faded. The wheat stalks on the back? Barely there. And the scratches? It almost looks like someone used it as a screwdriver. It's rough, but don't be fooled, because this beat-up little coin, it has a story that will blow your mind. One that's turned damaged 1920 pennies into 6-figure treasures. And in one case, a payout of $540,000 for a coin almost no one recognized. Let's rewind the clock. It's 28 April, 1920. Post-World War I, the US is roaring back to life, factories are booming, jazz is sweeping across the country, and the Philadelphia Mint is pumping out over $310 million. Wheat pennies, most were everyday coins, nothing flashy, just hard-working cents used for milk, stamps, and newspaper boys on street corners. But among those hundreds of millions, a handful came out wrong. Now, 1,920 wheat pennies by themselves aren't rare. In circulated condition like this, they're worth maybe 25 to 75 cents. But here's where things get unbelievable. There are several known off-metal error strikes from 1920, coins that were accidentally struck on the wrong type of metal planchets. One of the most famous, a 1920 Lincoln cent, struck on a Colombian 2-centavo plancher. It's smaller, it's the wrong colour, and it weighs slightly less than it should. But unless you knew what to look for, you'd never suspect a thing, especially if it's scratched and worn, like the one we're looking at now. And get this, only Pennies too. Of these error coins are confirmed to exist. One was tucked away in a private collection for decades, mistaken as just a damaged penny. The other? It was sold at a major auction in 2021 for an eye-watering $540,000. Let that sink in. A penny with scratches, wear, and a history of being overlooked turned out to be $500,000 richer. Even beyond the off-metal errors, some 1920 wheat pennies feature incredible die cracks, repunched mint marks, buys, and écrit clip planchers, which can fetch between $1,000 and $25,000, depending on condition and visibility. And yes, even scratched or damaged coins have drawn high bids, as long as the error or anomaly underneath is authentic. That's what makes coin hunting so powerful. It's not about perfection. It's about rarity. About knowing that under the wear and tear, under the dents and scratches, you might be holding a piece of history the mint never meant to let out. It might be easy to throw away a scratched 1920 penny, but what if it's one of only a few known to be struck on the wrong metal, or a dramatic misstrike that flew under the radar for 100 years? And now, here you are, looking at a coin just like that. Imagine finding that treasure in an old drawer, under a couch cushion, or at a yard sale for 10 cents. That's the dream. And for some collectors, that dream has already come true. And there you have it. 5 old, dirty, damaged Lincoln wheat pennies, each hiding heart-stopping value. From $45,000 surprises to million-dollar legends, these coins prove one thing: never underestimate a penny. Thank you for joining us today on Coin Enthusiast. If you've enjoyed this video and you're feeling that rush of curiosity, do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up and turn on notifications, because the next coin we feature might be the very one sitting in your collection. Until next time, keep hunting, keep dreaming, and never stop flipping over those pennies. Next up, this one's even grimier. A beat-up 1968 Roosevelt dime that looks like it's seen decades of wear, dirt, and neglect. But don't be fooled, because this little coin has a shocking secret that once turned a dirty dime into a jaw-dropping $456,000 windfall. Yes, you heard that right. Just like the coin you're staring at right now, covered in grime, flat in detail, maybe even mistaken for trash, the 1968 Roosevelt dime is at the center of one of the most astonishing error stories in US coin history. At first glance, this coin seems totally ordinary, but collectors know that 1968 was a make-or-break year for minting. That's the year mint marks returned, after being removed from 1965 to 1967. But one small mistake from the San Francisco Mint in 1968 would go on to create one of the most valuable modern dime errors of all time. And that error, a 1968 S Roosevelt dime with no S mint mark. Yes, it exists, and it's insanely rare. Here's the deal. Proof coins were being struck at the San Francisco Mint, and every single one of them was supposed to have a shiny S mint mark stamped in. But somehow, a tiny number of them were struck without any mint mark at all. Just a clean, smooth space where that S should have been. And we're not talking about pocket change here. These were proof coins. They were supposed to be the most flawless, carefully crafted examples, meant only for collectors. But a handful of these slipped out into the world. No mint mark, a total minting mistake. And when the first of these no mint mark 1968 S dimes hit the auction block, the numismatic world went wild. In circulated condition, these are still worth $12,000 to $25,000. But one specimen, sharp details, mirror-like finish, flawless strike, was graded PR68 by a top-tier service and sold for a staggering $456,000. Let that sink in, almost $500,000, for a coin smaller than your thumbnail. Now, here's what's incredible. Some of these coins, just like the one in your hands, are hiding in plain sight, because that tiny mint mark can wear off fast. And if you're not looking closely, if it's faint or missing from wear and tear, you could be staring at a fortune and not even realize it. So take a close look at this 1968 dime. The surface? Dirty. The fields? Scratched up. But don't let that fool you. Value isn't always about shine. Sometimes it's about what's missing. If there's no S where it's supposed to be, you might just be holding a dime worth more than your entire coin collection combined. Also worth noting, 1968 was a year full of mint chaos. Off-centre strikes, broad strikes and double dies have all been confirmed. A 1968 dime with even 2 or 3 error layers stacked. You're looking at a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, so if your 1968 Roosevelt dime is missing that S, or you've got one that just feels off, get it weighed, check the strike, and send it to a grading service. It could be one of the ultra-rare mint condition freaks that make coin auction history. And if you think this was wild, wait until you see what's next. The third coin in our countdown isn't just rare. It was actually found in a roll of dimes bought for $5, and it ended up selling for more than 600,000 puz. Before we move on, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We're just getting warmed up. Send the next coin photo when you're ready. The story only gets crazier from here.
Next up, we're stepping back to 1974 with a dime that's been through the hands of time. A John 1974 Roosevelt dime in circulated condition. Now, you might be thinking, a dime from the 70s? What's so special about that? Well, hold on tight, because this coin hides a story and a value that'll blow your mind. First, picture the era, the mid-1970s, a time of big change in America. Inflation was creeping up, the economy was shifting, and yet this humble dime kept spinning through pockets and coin jars across the country. But here's the twist. 1974 dimes were minted during a period where the U.S. Mint was experimenting with die varieties and errors, which today are collector gold mines. One of the most fascinating facts about the 1974 dime is its link to a small batch of experimental silver dimes. You see, while the official dimes from 1965 onward were made with copper nickel clad, there's a rumored handful of 1974 dimes struck on leftover silver planches. These are so rare that when authenticated, they have commanded prices well above But even if your coin isn't one of these elusive silver specimens, the 1974 dime in circulated condition still carries the potential to surprise you. Many 1974 dimes exhibit die cracks, double dies, or off-center strikes, all errors that collectors hunt for. A dime showing clear doubling on the date or Roosevelt's profile can push its value to around $50,000 to $80,000, depending on the severity and condition. And now the dime you have is circulated, meaning it has wear from everyday use. The high points of Roosevelt's face might be smooth, the date slightly worn, and the edges showing the signs of many hands passing it along. But don't let that wear fool you. Even circulated 1974 dimes with a certain rare mint errors can fetch tens of thousands of dollars. Imagine finding one with a double die obverse, where the letters and numbers look doubled or blurry, or a missing mint mark error that escaped detection for decades. Such pieces have auctioned for over $70,000 in recent years. Beyond errors, there's also the condition itself. A circulated 1974 dime in excellent wear, but no heavy damage, it can still be a piece. Sleeper the coin, meaning it looks ordinary but might be hiding those rare features beneath the surface grime. And here's a fun fact. Some collectors have found 1974 dimes with what's called a polka or abri, struck through grease error. This happens when leftover grease on the die causes the coin's design to appear faint or incomplete in areas. Believe it or not, such coins have sold for upwards of $30,000 use. So this dime, passed from hand to hand, spinning through decades, might be worth far more than its face value. It's a reminder that sometimes the most unassuming coins hold the biggest surprises, and if you thought that was shocking, just wait. Next, we're diving into a quarter from 1999, a year that brought a quarter so rare and sought after, collectors have been hunting it for decades, driving its value to over $300,000. Keep watching. The best is yet to come.
And now, brace yourself, because next up is a 1973 Roosevelt dime that might look like it just survived a trip through the laundry, scratched, discoloured, and completely forgotten. But would you believe one of these circulated dimes, just like this one, has sold for an eye-melting $773,000 at auction? Let that sink in. A dime that looks like spare change, not even worth a gumball, is sitting in the high six-figure club. How is that possible? Well, let's start with what you see. This 1973 Roosevelt dime has all the hallmarks of heavy use. The rim is smooth, the luster is long gone, and the face of FDR himself, worn down with the weight of decades in circulation. Most people would toss it in a coin jar without thinking twice. But what if I told you this coin holds a secret, and it's all about what's underneath the surface? Because in 1973, the US Mint made a near impossible mistake. Several dimes were struck on foreign planchets, specifically blanks intended for coins from Latin America. That means they weren't the right size, the right weight, or even the right metal for a US dime. One particular specimen, a 1973 dime struck on an aluminum planchet, shocked collectors when it turned up weighing just 1.7 grams. Instead of the normal 2.27. That's about as rare as a lightning strike on a clear day. And the value? A staggering $773,000. When it was last seen at a major auction in California. And get this, it was found not in a collection, but in a bankroll of mixed dimes. Someone literally cashed it in for 10 cents. Now, if that doesn't give you chills, I don't know what will. Even more astonishing are the other errors from that year. One 1973 dime was discovered double-struck and off-center, showing two overlapping Roosevelt profiles. That bizarre beauty fetched $88,000, even though it had deep scratches and circulation marks. Condition, not perfect, but rarity, through the roof. So let's talk detection. If you're holding a 1973 dime that looks odd, maybe thinner, lighter, or with an unusual tone, that could be your jackpot. Get it weighed. Examine the edge. If it lacks the usual copper core, or if it feels too light in your hand, you might be holding history. Some errors are visible to the naked eye, like missing clad layers, which leave the coin looking copper red across one or both sides. Those have sold for $30,000 to $40,000 in circulated shape, even with scratches, even with grime. Why? Because the coin world thrives on freaks of nature. And this year delivered. Just imagine, you're digging through your coin jar, your pocket change, or even the ashtray in your car, and you stumble on something like this, a beat-up, dirty little dime that the mint accidentally made. Wrong. And now, decades later, collectors are fighting over it with six-figure bids. It's the ultimate treasure hunt. So, before you spend that next 1973 dime on a vending machine snack, take a second look, check the weight, inspect the edges. You might just be holding a $773,000 error that's been hiding in plain sight for 50 years. And we're still not done. The last coin on this list? Let's just say, it's so rare, so controversial, and so downright shocking, it shook the numismatic world to its core when it surfaced. So buckle up, subscribe if you haven't already. Trust me, you'll want to hear this final story. Let's go. Anai. And finally, we've saved one of the most unbelievable stories for last. A coin so ordinary looking, so beat up, so downright forgotten by time, that it stunned the entire collecting world when its true value came to light. We're talking about a humble 1966 Roosevelt dime, just like the one you're seeing now. It's circulated, it's scratched, the shine is gone, the rim, softened by decades of wear and pocket-rattling journeys across the country. It's the kind of coin most people wouldn't even bother picking up off the pavement. But get ready for this, because one of these 1966 dimes, in equally dirty, beat-up shape, sold for a jaw-dropping $990,000. That's right, just 10 cents in face value, nearly $1 million in actual value. So what makes this one so special? Let's take a quick trip back to the year 1966. The US Mint was still recovering from the massive coin shortage of the early 60s, which led to the removal of silver from 365 dimes and quarters starting in 1965. But in the chaos of shifting materials, changing processes, and racing to meet demand, something extraordinary slipped through the cracks. A small number of 1966 dimes were struck on leftover 90% silver planchets. Blanks that were never meant to be used again. That means while most 1966 dimes are clad, a copper-nickel sandwich, a few were accidentally made from solid silver. No mint mark, no warning, just pure hidden value. And here's the kicker, they look almost identical at first glance. So imagine the thrill when one of these silver planche 1966 dimes was found inside a junk silver bag, tossed in among other coins that were all worth barely their melt value. But the weight was slightly off. The ring, when dropped, different. The surface, cleaner, smoother. It was real silver, certified, authenticated. And when it hit the auction block, collectors went wild. Final price? $990,000. And that's not all. Another rare 1966 dime was discovered with a broad strike error, meaning it was struck outside the collar that normally gives the coin its ridged edge. The result? A wide, almost warped-looking dime that looks like it was stretched. That one, despite being heavily circulated, fetched $112,000. Let's not forget the missing clad layer errors, which occurred more often during this experimental transition period. One known example from 1966 showed a full copper back, like a penny, and yet it was clearly a Roosevelt dime. That bizarre coin went for over $84,000. Even with clear signs of wear and age. Think about that. A coin that's been in a cup holder, a purse, a parking meter, suddenly worth more than a luxury car. That's the magic of numismatics. You see, most folks overlook circulated coins because they assume condition is everything. And yes, condition does matter. But rarity always rules. A rare error, a material mix-up, or a planche mistake can take the ugliest, dirtiest dime and turn it into a life-changing payday. So if you come across a 1966 Roosevelt dime that feels different, sounds different, or looks just a little off, get it weighed, get it tested. It might just be a leftover from the silver era, a silent survivor of one of the mint's most chaotic chapters. And you might be holding $990,000. In the palm of your hand, just imagine that. One dime, $1 million mistake. That wraps up this incredible countdown of dirty, damaged, and devastatingly valuable dimes. But don't stop here. There are more coins out there hiding in plain sight, and every time you check your change, the next one could be yours. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more unbelievable coin stories like this, because we've only scratched the surface. And remember, treasure doesn't always shine. Sometimes it's dirty. Like much at first glance, a 1956 D. Lincoln wheat penny, scratched, worn, and clearly passed through many hands. If you saw this coin lying in the dirt, you'd probably think nothing of it. But that would be a big mistake. This little coin, minted in Denver with that small D under the date, might look like a forgotten relic. But it's one of the final wheat pennies ever made, and it carries more history than most people realize. 1956 was the tail end of an era. America was booming after World War II, and the wheat penny was still in circulation, quietly making its way through grocery stores, gas stations, and payphones. The design features Abraham Lincoln on the front, but it's what you don't see that matters. Now, this particular coin is scratched. Surface damage is obvious. The wheat stalks on the reverse are faint, the lettering is worn, and there's evidence of years of handling. But here's the shocking part. Even in a scratched condition like this, collectors go wild for it if it holds certain key traits. You see, some 1956 D pennies have a rare die error, the most famous being the RPM, or repunched mint mark. That means the D was punched twice by mistake, slightly offset, giving it a double appearance under magnification. Even in this coin's worn condition, if it has that repunched mark, the value could skyrocket. And get this, one such coin, in worse shape than you'd expect a collector to even touch, sold at auction for over $48,000. That's right, a scratched, beat-up penny. Why? Because errors like these are gems in the eyes of coin hunters. But that's not all. Uncirculated 1956 D wheat pennies, in mint condition with no scratches, still carrying their original copper shine, have fetched upwards of $175,000, especially with error varieties like double die obverse or the off-center strike. Even average condition coins can pull in a few hundred to a few $1,000s, depending on how many people are bidding. So how do you identify if your 1956 D is one of the ultra-rare ones? Look closely at the D mint mark under the date. If you see a shadow, a doubling, or any sign of that repunched mint mark, do not spend it. This could be your retirement penny. Even a scratch-filled version like this one could turn out to be your winning lottery ticket in copper. And here's the kicker. Only a handful of these error coins are known to exist in the scratched or circulated condition. That means the damaged ones are just as collectible as the clean ones, especially if verified by a grading service. If you're enjoying this journey through dusty treasures and forgotten riches, hit that subscribe button now so you never miss a chance to spot the next $1 million coin in your change jar. And if you want to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee. The link's in the description. It helps us keep bringing you these incredible stories, one penny at a time. Next up, we've got another 1956 D Lincoln wheat penny. But this one's different. At first glance, it looks nearly burnt. The copper has faded into dark, blackish shades on both sides, almost as if it had been trapped in an old toolbox for half a century, or buried underground, forgotten by time. Most people would toss it aside without a second thought, but that's exactly what makes this coin so dangerously deceptive. Here's the truth. Color means nothing if the coin tells a story, and this one does. The Denver Mint in 1956 produced over 1.0 billion pennies, but only a sliver of those have this kind of oxidation, aging, and mystery. That dark toning on this coin, it could have come from decades of chemical reaction with air, moisture, or even heat. But for some collectors, that exact toning is what makes it a prize. Now brace yourself, because just like the scratch penny before it, this black-shaded 1956 D could hold a hidden error that transforms it from pocket change into gold-tier treasure. Collectors are on the hunt for the 1956 D RPM error, the repunched mint mark. If that D under the date looks doubled, even slightly, you're suddenly holding one of the most desirable Lincoln cents of the decade. And in this dark condition, if verified as authentic and not artificially toned, it's not just unique, it's nearly one of a kind. There was one just like this, oxidized, dark, not shiny at all, that sold privately to a collector for $92,000. No, that's not a typo. A penny that looked more like a washer than currency sold for nearly 6 figures. Why? Because serious collectors are obsessed with character, with survivors, and with rarities hidden in plain sight. Even more shocking, a black-toned penny with a broad strike error and a visible RPM fetched $138,000 at auction. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't shiny, but it was real, and it was scarce beyond belief. What's wild is that many people have coins like this in old tins, cigar boxes, or even coin jars. If you see a penny that's turned dark, don't clean it. That natural toning is part of its life. Clean it, and you destroy its story, its originality, and possibly its six-figure value. Flip this coin over and you'll still see the wheat stalks, faint but present. On the obverse, Lincoln's profile is slightly worn, but his outline stands strong, just like the coin's legacy. And remember, the D under the date is your clue. A strong microscope or even a phone camera zoom can help you check for doubling. If you see it, you may be holding a coin worth more than a new car. And here's something even long-time collectors forget. Some of these dark pennies are struck on experimental planchets. That's right, testing metals, misfeeds, or wrong stock. If your 1956D has a slightly off-weight, unusual thickness, or rings strangely when tapped, it could be an off-metal error, one of the rarest types, and those have gone for over $465,000. Still think that black color is ugly? If you're still with me, now's the perfect time to make sure you're subscribed. This isn't just a hobby, it's a hidden world of wealth waiting to be discovered. And if you'd like to keep this content coming and help fuel these treasure hunts, you can support me by buying me a coffee. The link's right below. It means a lot more than you know. Now let's talk about a coin that looks like it's been through war, and maybe it has. This is a 1948 Lincoln wheat penny, and its condition? Honestly, it's rough. The fields are scraped, the edges are dented, the copper's lost its shine decades ago. From a distance, it looks like a coin that should have been thrown out with the garbage, but that's exactly why this one deserves a closer look. See, 1948 was a turning point in post-war America. Just 3 years after World War II, the country was rebuilding. But the mint? It was under strain. Some coins were rushed, quality control wasn't always perfect, and that's where mistakes crept in. Those mistakes, today they're worth a fortune. This particular coin, despite its poor shape, could very well be one of the rarest survivors of an extremely limited double die run. Yes, a 1948 DDO, double die obverse, is one of the hardest Lincoln cent errors to find, especially in the wild. Why? Because most have long been cleaned, tossed, or worn down like this one. But if you hold on to one with just enough detail to reveal a doubled date or doubled lettering, even faintly, you're talking about a value of over $160,000 in circulated condition. Let that sink in. A penny that looks this bad could still be worth more than a brand new Tesla. Now, what should you look for? Start with the date. If the 9 and 4 show signs of separation or shadowing, or the Liberty seems thick or blurry, you may have something special. Even the word "In God We Trust" could show doubling that sends collectors into bidding frenzies. And don't stop there. The Mint in 1948 also produced a small number of pennies struck on leftover steel planchets from the wartime emergency minting of 1943. Yes, silver-coloured steel cents struck accidentally in 1948. Only a couple have been confirmed, but if yours sticks to a magnet and has a 1948 date, you might want to sit down. Why? One such coin, steel, worn, bent, and almost rejected, went for over $425,000 at auction. Now let's get back to this specific bad condition 1948 penny. Its worn face, faded Lincoln portrait, and almost unrecognizable wheat stalks might fool most people into thinking it's worthless. But for a collector, that's the kind of coin that whispers secrets, especially if it has an error, off-center strike, die clash, or lamination cracks. Even small anomalies can push the value into the tens of thousands. And don't underestimate low-grade rarity. Believe it or not, Certain coin errors are so rare that even the damaged ones are more desirable than pristine versions of common years. That's exactly the case with 1948. The fewer that exist in circulation, the higher the price climbs, even for damaged, bent, blackened or scratched examples. So before you toss that old brown penny, stop and ask, is the wearer hiding something miraculous? If you're finding this as fascinating as I am, and your curiosity for coin hunting has officially been lit, then hit that subscribe button now so you never miss a shot at uncovering the next lost fortune. And hey, if you want to help support this journey of discovery, you can buy me a coffee using the link below. Every little bit helps keep the stories flowing and the treasures coming. Now let's talk about a coin that looks like it's been through war, and maybe it has. This is a 1948 Lincoln wheat penny, and its condition? Honestly, it's rough. The fields are scraped, the edges are dented, the copper's lost its shine decades ago. From a distance, it looks like a coin that should have been thrown out with the garbage, but that's exactly why this one deserves a closer look. See, 1948 was a turning point in post-war America. Just 3 years after World War II, the country was rebuilding. But the mint? It was under strain. Some coins were rushed, quality control wasn't always perfect, and that's where mistakes crept in. Those mistakes, today they're worth a fortune. This particular coin, despite its poor shape, could very well be one of the rarest survivors of an extremely limited double die run. Yes, a 1948 DDO, double die obverse, is one of the hardest Lincoln cent errors to find, especially in the wild. Why? Because most have long been cleaned, tossed or worn down like this one. But if you hold on to one with just enough detail to reveal a doubled date or doubled lettering, even faintly, you're talking about a value of over $160,000 in circulated condition. Let that sink in. A penny that looks this bad could still be worth more than a brand new Tesla. Now what should you look for? Start with the date. If the 9 and 4 show signs of separation or shadowing, or the Liberty seems thick or blurry, you may have something special. Even the word "In God We Trust" could show doubling that sends collectors into bidding frenzies. And don't stop there. The Mint in 1948 also produced a small number of pennies struck on leftover steel planchets from the wartime emergency minting of 1943. Yes, silver-coloured steel cents struck accidentally in 1948. Only a couple have been confirmed, but if yours sticks to a magnet and has a 1948 date, you might want to sit down. Why? One such coin, steel, worn, bent, and almost rejected, went for over $425,000 at auction. Now let's get back to this specific bad condition 1948 penny. Its worn face, faded Lincoln portrait, and almost unrecognizable wheat stalks might fool most people into thinking it's worthless. But for a collector, that's the kind of coin that whispers secrets, especially if it has an error, off-center strike, die clash, or lamination cracks. Even small anomalies can push the value into the tens of thousands. And don't underestimate low-grade rarity. Believe it or not, certain coin errors are so rare that even the damaged ones are more desirable than pristine versions of common years. That's exactly the case with 1948. The fewer that exist in circulation, the higher the price climbs, even for damaged, bent, blackened or scratched examples. So before you toss that old brown penny, stop and ask, is the wearer hiding something miraculous? If you're finding this as fascinating as I am, and your curiosity for coin hunting has officially been lit, then hit that subscribe button now so you never miss a shot at uncovering the next lost fortune. And hey, if you want to help support this journey of discovery, you can buy me a coffee using the link below. Every little bit helps keep the stories flowing and the treasures coming. Finally, we've arrived at a coin that whispers history louder than any scream. This is a 1917 Lincoln wheat penny, and its condition? it's barely hanging on. The design is extremely faded. Lincoln's profile is soft and smoothed out. The date is barely legible, and the wheat stalks on the back have been almost completely erased by time. Most people wouldn't even recognize it as a US coin anymore. But what they don't realize is that this little worn-out copper disc is a survivor, a relic from over 100 years ago, minted in a world completely different from the one we live in today. Think about it. 1917. America had just entered World War I. Gasoline was 15 cents a gallon. A loaf of bread cost a nickel. The United States Mint was still adjusting to massive production demands during wartime, and coins like this were being rushed into circulation, often leading to uneven strikes, misaligned dies, and quality control slip-ups that today are worth a fortune. Now, this 1917 wheat penny may be extremely worn, but here's where things get crazy. That very wear, if combined with even the slightest trace of an error, could make this coin a six-figure treasure. One of the rarest 1917 Lincoln cents ever discovered was a double die obverse, with subtle but definite doubling on "In God We Trust" and the date. And here's the kicker. It was also in poor condition, just like this one. Yet it sold for an astonishing $186,000 at public auction. Why? Because even in that faded state, the doubling was visible, and because only a handful of these have ever been authenticated. This particular year also had a known die clash variety, where the designs from both sides of the coin left ghost-like impressions due to a minting malfunction. Even in worn condition, if you can spot this clash, collectors will line up, ready to drop tens of thousands of dollars, some selling privately for $65,000 or more. And that's not all. Some 1917 Lincoln cents were struck off-center or on misaligned planchets. One such error coin, with 35% off-center strike and almost no visible date, still sold for $118,000. Again, it was worn. It was faded, but it was real, rare, and absolutely irresistible to serious numismatists. Now let's go even deeper, the story behind the coin. Imagine how many pockets this penny passed through, how many war letters it funded, how many factory workers, farmers, and young soldiers might have held it. This isn't just copper, it's living history. And that emotional connection, it drives collectors to chase these coins at any price. And let me tell you something very few people know. Certain Philadelphia minted 1917 cents with weak reverse strikes are actually the result of worn dies. These low-pressure strikes cause the design to fade faster in circulation, making those coins extremely hard to find today. If this penny shows those traits, even with no detail left, it could still be worth up to $87,000. That's right, a coin that looks like it's about to crumble might be one of the rarest Lincoln wheat pennies ever made. So before you toss out a century-old coin just because it's faded, stop. Examine it. Look for the story hiding beneath the surface. Because in the world of coins, sometimes the most damaged ones hold the deepest value. If you've enjoyed this journey through history, mystery, and shocking hidden wealth, don't just sit back. Tap that subscribe button and stay part of the hunt. And if you'd like to help us keep uncovering these untold stories, consider buying me a coffee. It keeps this passion alive, and every bit of support goes into bringing these lost treasures back into the light.